Ah, boy, Mountaineer Nation. Well, if you follow me on Twitter at Carson_Fox27, you might have saw when I tweeted last week a GIF of the Minions with a little red siren going off last week when the news broke that quarterback Nicco Marchiol was seeing his own personal doctors out in the state of Colorado. Concerning. Then wasn't there over the weekend for the game against Utah. And now, after Monday's show at Kegler's, Rich Rodriguez making the point to say that West Virginia's doctors want to get with Nico's doctors so that they're all on the same page. You could pretty much understand, connect the dots, writing on the wall. So I had all intents and purposes of coming on late Monday evening to do a show to kind of talk about these and kind of the theme of what to do for the West Virginia football program moving forward, because I had heard some other podcasters out there, talking about a youth movement that needs to come. So I needed to weigh in on this. Well, what do you know? The cold that my little girl ended up getting last week kind of transmitted from her to my wife, and then I get it, so she's got a double ear infection. I can barely talk, so I'm going to try and power through this the best I can, but thanks for tuning in. I'm Carson Fox for another edition of Fox on West Virginia Mountaineer Sports, and so I took like a numbing lozenge so I can just have enough voice power to do this podcast. I hope I then have enough to talk about the preview of West Virginia and BYU tomorrow night, but this is more important because this involves a player that, if you also follow me on Twitter, I said when hearing the news earlier today, you were the chosen one, using the Obi-Wan Kenobi GIF in the same fashion that I felt like Will Greer would be for this program, that Geno Smith was over a decade ago. News breaking that, unfortunately, Pete Nakos from On3 tweeting out that Nico Marchiol plans to medical redshirt and enter the transfer portal at the end of the season. And we're only talking about week 6, y'all. It is October 1st. It has come to this. All of the joy, all of the happiness of September 13th and winning the backyard brawl to now, this is where we at. Time flies in the world of college football. 24 hours seems like an eon. As I always say, it's like I come to try and use or do these shows, and then what do you know, 24 hours happens and the context and the situation completely can change. And so, last week when I heard that news, I was connecting the dots that this was really a Charles Woods 2.0 situation. I don't think this is really Tucker DeVries or Sagaba Kanate. I think this is closer to Charles Woods. In that, not exactly apples to apples, because I think Charles Woods was like being pressured to play by Neil Brown or didn't. We never got the full story on that situation from the 2022 season. But then, of course, Charles Woods ends up getting that year of extra eligibility, going to SMU, and using his last year to go play for the Mustangs. So in this situation, this is what you kind of suspected. Now, what he's trying to do, I feel, so we've seen maybe the last of Nicco Marchiol. I don't know, maybe. I think we've now seen the last of Nicco Marchiol in a West Virginia Mountaineer uniform, which for me is just, I don't want to say devastating, but like the fan in me is really devastated because, followed him since high school. Since his recruiting journey, flipping from Florida State to the Mountaineers over the summer of, I think, 2021, and you thought, okay, he's going to be the game changer for the Neil Brown program. See how, things go, weighing it out still with Garrett Green, who had yet to become a starter, but it sounds like this kid is the real deal. Then he goes out, and his Hamilton High School team ends up beating, I think it was Bishop Gorman, one of the top 10 teams in the country. All of it, becomes legend on SportsCenter. Comes back, I think, from 18 points down with a little over a minute to play in the game. So you just think, like, this kid has all of the intangible qualities. They're passing on Rocco Becht, a legacy of one of the best player ever at his position's father, in Anthony Becht at tight end, they're passing on him to go get this kid. This is how much they see the potential in him to be the future of the program. Unfortunately, that wasn't to be had. As for Nico, I think he probably got hurt in the Ohio game. I don't know how severe it was because, he was able to play in the Pitt game, was able to still play in the Kansas game. But he's probably been beat up because this offensive line can't protect him. He's still trying to run the ball. I think, trying to think through this situation, there's some injury there. But in his mind, he probably doesn't think the offensive line situation is going to get any better. He's thinking Coach Rodriguez will want to continue to give reps to other quarterbacks in game situations, and he would rather hit the transfer portal this offseason, petition the NCAA for a medical redshirt to get another year's worth of eligibility, and have 2 years to market himself for another Power 4 program or perhaps a G6 program. And you just look at it, the offensive line, Jaheim White's got hurt, and his skill set, as I've said, just with the way that this team is constructed as of right now, that he is a square peg in a round hole. It's nothing against Nico. It's nothing against him as a player, and Coach Rodriguez is not going to, diversify so much so from what he wants his base offense to be, and he just does not fit, especially with the line and with his foot situation. So I understand it from Nico's perspective, and I understand it from Coach Rodriguez's perspective. You have the leash, as I've said. You win one game or you win them all. You have the leash this year to experiment at quarterback because wins and losses do not matter for this year. It is all about building the nucleus, finding the 300, as I've said, of your toughest warriors to build upon this roster for 2026. You're trying to win games. That's why I got a little bit skeptical in a way. Excuse me, I told you there would be throat clears. There will be throat clears with this cold trying to power through this video. That sending the message early on in the spring that if West Virginia wasn't competing for a Big 12 championship in the month of November, that the season would be considered a failure. And I think he kind of mixed that in with, all these new players we got coming in, all these new coaches. I don't even know their names yet. Yeah. But it just wasn't as clear. If at least that was something that we can give the previous head coach credit for, is that he set tempered expectations, even though we hate the trust the climb mantra and movement for what it built to nothing over 6 years. But at least he said that, hey, this is going to take time. And from 2019 to 2020, things seemed to see a jump. Just wasn't there finally in 2021. Now he's going and saying earlier this week on a show that West Virginia is going to be playing for a national championship in 5 years. What? Is Major Harris still on this team? I don't get it. And I'm going to put an asterisk next to what I'm just about to say, but you don't owe Nico anything if you're Rich Rodriguez, and you need to draw your line in the sand that this is where the line is within this program, that it's program and old gold and blue above player. It is team concept over individual. Now here's the slippery slope that I thought about talking about over the summer, that I said, let's give it time. Let's see. Maybe he comes, this team starts out 4-1, like I was thinking in August and made my preseason prediction show. Said anything can happen. Maybe this team meshes. It's going to be better already than 2024 offense, defense. He's got new coaches, all this. Like, he knows how to win. Let's see how it goes. But I thought then, it's now coming to fruition a little bit here in this situation. There is a slippery slope that Coach Rodriguez dipped his toe in the waters of with his comments about the TikTok dances this past summer. And you might say, Carson, that's preposterous. That's the dumbest thing you've ever said on this program. But here's what I mean by this, is Gen Z does not do well with being told what to do. And in the player empowerment NIL transfer portal era, it's harder than ever for middle-class programs like West Virginia to retain top talent. And Rodriguez, more so than, I don't care about TikTok videos. I don't care about like the stupid things. And again, I don't care about Gen Z players, as I'm saying here, like, I think you need to set some sort of standard in that same kind of attitude, that you can't let the players run the program. It starts with the head coach. And that was the different mentality. That's the different mentality that Coach Rodriguez was supposed to be bringing in, as opposed to Neil Brown. And it was totally different. So certain, circumstances change. You would think you would get exactly what you're getting out of Coach Rodriguez. But I'm going to look at this from another perspective on the opposite side of the coin. Is now Coach Rodriguez needs to create buy-in. That's why you have all of these former players like Pat McAfee and so on and so forth, jumping out of the woodwork, putting Coach Rodriguez on a pedestal and singing his praises from those early 2000s area. It's because that he rewarded hardworking guys who had no nonsense attitude, hard work kind of mentality, guys who waited necessarily their turn, stayed loyal, did said all of the right things off the field, is a great ambassador for the university, and it's most important of all, is a good player. And that's what I'm describing in Nicco Marchiol. So West Virginia is a fit program. And right now it is only going to appeal to a small subsect of players. And right now West Virginia can't get legacy players in Chris Henry Jr. and Travis Johnson and the brother of a 4-star recruit, Tyshawn Dew's younger brother, LaRon, and even hometown stars like Jimmy Gregg, a punter from the number one punter in the country out of University High School, just down the road from the university, and Deron Parks, in-state from Nitro, to commit to this university. So like I said, it takes a small subsect of players who are willing to buy into this program, work hard, wait your turn. If it's a developmental program like this, you got to reward guys when they get to this level. And like I look at Nicco Marchiol and look what he did during his time. He waited, his turn under Garrett Green, who was in front of him. I mean, I kind of feel as if this should have been Nicco Marchiol's team from 2024. He accepted sitting behind Garrett Green because, again, Garrett Green being a redshirt senior off the 2023 year that he had. But he was ready once Garrett Green went down with that injury in the Kansas State game. And especially, this was a huge decision by Coach Neil Brown, but he decided to stick with Garrett Green, his fifth-year senior, for that Baylor game, that all-important Baylor game this past year. Then UCF, Texas Tech, and the Frisco Bowl, when it should have finally become Nicco's team after that Baylor game, at least. It should have been after, again, Arizona and Cincinnati. He stuck through the coaching transition. You bring in another fifth-year starting quarterback from outside the program and Jalen Henderson to compete. Okay, I'll compete with him and I'll beat him. And he did. He got to week 1. He was the starter. And so now to this point in time, like I said, I get where Nicco Marchiol is coming from. So unless Coach Rodriguez told Nicco that he is moving on from, without him, which I don't think is the case, because from what he said about pulling him in the pit game, team needed a spark, raised a fire out of Nicco Marchiol to come back into the pit game. He came in, led him to victory, then he started the next week out of Kansas. Did that one drive, that Jalen Henderson came in, like, just really cement in Nicco's mind that, all right, it's Jalen's team now. I need to leave. I need to take this nuclear of an option to go to my hometown doctors or whatever to try and get them to say, like, that he deserves medical enough clearance to be shut down for the season, which I know that is his move, to then petition the NCAA. I don't like this move for Nicco, because I think that I just at least say this is the wrong move, because, hey, he could get healthy, depending upon the severity of that foot injury, which, again, if it had happened during Ohio, he didn't play last week against Utah. That's a week off, 2 weeks off. and see how he does in practice the next week. He could get healthy through next week's bye week. He could regain the starting job against Central Florida on the road. By that point in time, maybe Ty Edwards is back healthy. Dior Hubbard starts to really get going. The offensive line makes some changes and starts to gel. I think they could potentially win a few games. I think they maybe still have to steal one from either TCU, ASU, or Texas Tech to get to a bowl game, while also winning against Colorado, Utah, and UCF. But man, if you get to a bowl game, I feel like this year, this is better with, I think, more challenging circumstances than where West Virginia was in 2019 under Neil Brown in his first year. I think that can really build some momentum going into the offseason, that could be sold to recruits in the transfer portal, high school, you name it, just to build this momentum. Now you're back as your redshirt senior. The program that I know, it's been very challenging. It hasn't been the easiest road for Nico, and he's been very, very patient. But to take this into his own hands like this, quit on this team as it is right now, say I'm done for the year, and walk like this, I'm a little bit disappointed. I feel like this might be the last time that I get to wear this jersey. And again, for a guy who's done so much off the field and been a great ambassador for this university, it sucks that it has to come to this. But that is the era in which we live. But again, by Coach Rodriguez going with other options, there are a whole bunch of guys I feel like who are on this year's team with extra eligibility for next year and beyond who are watching this situation. And most of them, it's a few of them being Rodriguez recruited guys, but most being Neil Brown recruited guys. I think they're just noticing what happens. So maybe they get it. They understand the nature of the business because the semi-professionalization of college football. They understand it from the coach's side. Maybe they understand it from a player's side. It is what it is. So they can get it for, like I said, for both sides. But it's more important, I feel like, on a program like West Virginia than it is for a program like Oregon, who can let one of their top incoming transfers in the country, Nico's not a transfer, but I'm just saying one of your top players on your team, in your program, just walk, in the transfer portal and say, like Oregon did today with Mekhi Hughes at running back, because they're loaded with talent up and down the roster. West Virginia doesn't have that. So if you're wanting to create this atmosphere that it's, family, good culture, buy-in, it's not just transactional and business-like, because I've said before and I've said again, you have to walk a fine line this next year because, and you're flooding this, I think there's already 25 high school commits I counted, and that's great. That's great to see that West Virginia still trying to build that pipeline of high school talent, and they have some players at some different positions that I'm really intrigued by. But next year, they're still going to have to go out there, and I'm thinking somewhere in the ballpark of 40 new transfers at different positions. Because you have so many one-year guys that you brought in, they're out because of expired eligibility, but also of what I'm seeing behind them. And you're going to have to fill some gaps. So I just really, really hate this. I just think from a roster management standpoint, now kind of looking back over the last 9 months, West Virginia had so many holes to fill on the defensive side of the ball that it had to put more of an emphasis on the transfer portal, recruiting the defensive side of the ball. Because if they didn't have those kinds of investments, and I know Jamori Robinson hasn't added very much, but say a him, Michael Coach, Jason Chambers, Fred Perry, Darian Lewis, Chase Wilson, West Virginia, Eddie Kelly, they'd be getting beat worse than they have these past couple of weeks. So, I think they thought, the brain trust there, that Coach Rodriguez would be able to figure it out on the offensive side of the ball without as much investment, namely on the offensive line. And Coach Rodriguez didn't think Coach Matt Moore was hard edge enough, so he let him, then following right behind him, Tomas Remak and Kyle Altuner walk with him, costing West Virginia 2 probable starters. And he gave Chad Scott a chance, didn't give Matt Moore a chance. And who's to say, if Matt Moore would still be here, might you have Johnny Johnny Williams over at left tackle. You could flip Nick Cray over to right tackle. You'd have Tomas Rimac at left guard. Maybe you'd have Kyle Altuner at right guard and Landon Livingston. So then you feel a whole lot better about your offensive line, getting a push up front, adding protection for Nico in the pass game, and you're not at this situation. So, short-term fix for a potential long-term problem, but you need to start off well. So, I mean, I feel as if, at this point in time, I'll take that backyard brawl win, baby, absolutely. But not a great start so far for the West Virginia program. I'm hoping, that they can get through this week against BYU, win or loss. I mean, of course, I wanted to win, but then can really use the bye week. I mean, I don't know if you have a players-only meeting, as I've heard Eugene Napoleon call for, saying that you got to get some. But then, who are some of those leaders who lead a players-only meeting if they're 1 year's worth of eligibility guys who aren't going to be around next year? Jaheim White's having surgery and rehabbing. Is it? Rodney Gallagher? Is it Eddie Vestorinen, who's even still out of eligibility, but been through thick and thin with this program for now 5 seasons? Is it some of the underclassmen who just got here from outside of WVU and now feel like they have to take a step up because they're going to be 26 leaders and beyond? So I just hate this situation for all parties. I'm so sad that it's come to this because I really like Nico. I think like some of the, things he's done off the field for the program, he's in rare company with only, I think, like 7 or 8 other quarterbacks in program history who have ever beaten Pitt twice. So that's something to hang your hat on, baby. You got to love that. So he'll, if you want to go by the adage, which I've very much critiqued, from time to time, the once a Mountaineer, always a Mountaineer. Does Nicco Marchiol fit that mold of what you will, say about him in the annals of history moving forward? Or is it, you just sucks that in the era of NIL and the transfer portal, and if he's trying to use this to, better fit his desires individually, not only monetarily, but for playing time, if he's trying to, go like, and I don't think it can compare also to like the Matthew Sluka situation last year, ending up from Washington State down to James Madison. Does he look at, some schools in his home states of Colorado and Arizona? Does he try and go back out west? Does he look for just his best situation of someone who will take him within the Power Four? My goodness, if Pitt tries to offer him, I will be furious. So it's just, man, I'm telling you, I tell people all the time, you got to have the strongest will to be a West Virginia fan. C.J. Donaldson this past offseason, now Nicco Marchiol today. Just like women will break your heart, but at least they won't take your heart and then stamp on it multiple times year after year after year. But that's unfortunately what we sign up for as West Virginia fans, the highs of highs and then the lows of lows. So I'm just kidding. It's just a game at the end of the day. But just really a sad situation that this is how it has to end for Nicco Marchiol. And I wish the best for him in the future. And I just hope that this is a moment then that this program can move forward from, not let it become a distraction that, taints the program, kind of like Jamal Adai did years ago whenever he took Tyke Smith, opening up a door for it to be cool to transfer out of West Virginia, then doing it the next year, stealing Akeem Mesidor down to Miami. So that's what's going to help West Virginia become a better program. Yes, I understand the coaches. I truly do. But it's finding guys who are those diamonds in the rough that eventually become gems after years worth of development, coaching, and strategy. And the way you get those, guys to stick around. Yes, win, but like I said, buy into the culture, buy into the environment. And you had a guy in Nicco Marchiol who I feel like was pretty darn bought in. And unfortunately, that's the way the cookie crumbles in this business that is college football. And if it's going to become a business like that, even for a program like West Virginia, I feel like it's going to be really hard to try and recreate the kind of past that we all knew of 20 years ago with what I'm describing, with those guys who all bought in to West Virginia's culture, program, stuck it out together. And, I mean, I just think it's a sign of the times. It's the sign of the times with NIL and the transfer portal these days, and the individualism that has infected the sport of college football, that it's not always about we, it's about me, and that's what Coach Rodriguez is trying to change. And it doesn't matter who it is, how long you've been here. It's just unfortunate that it has to be Nico of all people in this situation. Ugh. So I'd love to know your thoughts, good, bad, or indifferent. Leave your comments here on YouTube. If you've liked this video, please like it so more Mountaineer fans can see it across YouTube. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog that I do this each and every week. And even when I have a sickness, I do this each and every week. I can barely talk, but I powered through it. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hail West Virginia. Let's go. And I'm going to record tomorrow night. Hopefully my voice isn't kicked entirely. And we'll talk about BYU and West Virginia Friday night out in Provo, Utah. So spot that ball, baby.